So you want to command a spaceship in Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars RPG Age of Rebellion? Well, the Commander Career's Commodore talent tree may be the right one for you. First of all, this is a really interesting tree structured. We have these 4 different facets or roles to a character in these 4 columns, only connecting at the bottom of the talent tree, and each one basically is just one of those roles. So it's definitely tempting to pick this up as a supplemental tree if one of those roles is something you're deficient in. Just make a beeline down that column and have that supplement your thing. Or you could play it as sort of a jack-of-all-tradesian-ish kind of character, I guess. Let's go into the nitty-gritty of it. So first of all, we have one column which is basically our gen eds, I guess. Talents that are useful to basically any character. Grit, which will help us with our strain threshold, a bit more strain to help us fuel our other talent, which will help us with our initiative. So that's useful for... Oh, and dedication. Can't forget dedication. It's in nearly every single talent tree, so I almost never bother to mention it, but a +1 to a characteristic of your choice. It's the thing. As far as the other facets to our character, we have leadership, mechanical stuff, mostly repairs, and also navigation. First of all, the techie stuff. So most of it is just we heal more wounds or trauma, hull trauma, on the starship when we succeed at the check. It doesn't help us succeed anymore. We're not more likely to succeed, but when we do, we can heal more. Which is really good because it's not often you could do a check to heal hull trauma on a spaceship, unless you are at port or in a facility that has all the big things, at which point you typically just pay a bunch of credits for someone else to do that. But when you're out in the black, you're reliant on one check per encounter or something like that. You're very limited in how often you can repair. I think maybe until you have to dock. I don't remember. Look that up. You really want that check to count, so being able to heal a bit more is pretty helpful. We have another thing that will help keep your ship in the game. You can, with a pretty high cost, convert damage into system strain. Maybe you can narrate it as you push the ship to its limits and you're able to turn real hard so you don't take the hit, but it strains the systems. You don't need an explanation. You don't need it. It's just fine. The point is it takes less damage in the first place. And finally, we have something that will help us with the ground game, which is good. You don't want a vehicle talent tree that's all about the vehicles. How often are you actually in working a vehicle of yours? That you want a little help with the ground game. And known schematic is a wonderful talent. We get fairly early too, which you just know, or at least you have a chance of knowing, the schematics of building base or a large ship that you're in, so you kind of know where stuff is and you can find alternate routes. And I use this all the time with one of my characters. Annoyed the crap out of my GM. I love it. It's great. Leadership, we get help with our leadership checks in 2 different ways, and 2 very basic different ways, but still, it's way more help than leadership really needs. How often do you use leadership? I mean, if you have a talent that uses it, that's most, but we don't have that. So that's like half the use right there of leadership, because it's using your talking check to sort of inspire someone and their sense of duty and giving them a drill sergeant kind of speech typically, or maybe you're giving them orders, a set of tasks they have to do. A lot of the times there are other talking checks which just feel more natural. They tend to be used more often. Probably more help with leadership checks than we really need, but we do have command classic leadership talent, which in addition to helping you in general will also, when you do a leadership check on someone, they get some help with their discipline checks, which will help them with fear checks. And also, it's one of the things they can do at the end of every combat or other structured encounter to kind of catch their breath. Discipline are cool, so maybe with your help their discipline might be better. And also, we have another talent, fire control, where you can take not an action. It says an action, but if you look in the description, it's actually a maneuver. It says 3 times it's a maneuver. Overwriting this, it's definitely a maneuver, and it really should be a maneuver because you can't do it so often. It's definitely not overpowered. But anyway, you do a maneuver on your ship, and then for a time, all combat checks from your vehicle will get some help. And really the way the wording is, I guess that would be if you're on a speeder bike and someone just pulls out their pistol and shoots, they would get help from that. So fairly useful, not just the turret gunner on your Millennium Falcon clone or whatever. Still though, you do have to be on a vehicle in the first place, so it's not overpowered. It really doesn't need to be an action. It's not an action, it's maneuver. Remember that. Make sure your GM knows and or your player knows, so you're doing it right and not screwing yourself over. So, navigation. Mostly astrogation, but also there's a little bit of help dealing with the environment I don't like this talent. Let's just focus on that. So, Familiar Sons. It's one of those talents where it allows you to do a check in a certain way that you would already kind of assume that you could do anyway. And you didn't realize that, oh, I couldn't do this before, but now that I have this talent, or rather, if I do buy this talent, then I could do the thing that I obviously would have thought I could do anyway. So, do a knowledge check, one of two different knowledge checks, in order to find out information about a planet. Outer Rim or Core Worlds, to find out information about a planet within Outer Rims or Core Worlds that you're on. You have to be on it. There's a certain difficulty, but it's not exactly easy, so it's not like... You would not think that normally this check would be even harder, but because of this talent you can do it easier. There's no clear-cut way in which this is even remotely or could be remotely better, or like other talents like this where you think, okay, well here's the limit. Other people could only do this, but you can now do this because of this talent, so I'm going to put that barrier on other people in order to make this talent worth it. Just get rid of it. Either make it a free space, exit out, and mosey on past it, or just house rule it, just change it to where you can decrease the difficulty of a check to know about the environment, like the outdoors environment, terrain, plants, animals, that kind of stuff, which is what they really describe, with one of these two different checks. So one of these two different checks in a semi-specific way, then you get some help with it. That seems fair enough. Spending any more brain power on trying to make this even remotely useful as is not worth it. Just either get rid of it or do my house rule. And then we have way more help than we need on astrogation. That's one of those things where it's fine. A 3 in intellect, or maybe a free rank, and then a talent or 2 to help. That's all we need. We have a ton of talents to help. How many setback die do you really need to remove from an astrogation check? I mean, typically when you fail an astrogation check, a lot of the times you just go to a different place. Like, oh no, in my gallivanting across the galaxy, star-hopping space adventure thing, we have to go to a different place we've never been before. Darn. Depends on how your GM runs it, of course. It could just be, like, more damage to your ship. But how much better an astrogation do you really need to be? Maybe it's a little overkill. And also, checks will take a lesser amount of time. That's the thing I want to focus on at some point. Talents that lessen the time they take, but it's not always clear. Like, what is the best way to determine how much time they take in the first place, and dealing with that. Is that a whole video? I don't know. Anyway, basic passive dice pool manipulation, and also you can strain yourself to make the astrogation check even easier. It's kind of overkill. You can probably ignore a big chunk of that column. Anyway, as far as playing your Commodore and building them, okay, so what are you doing on a day-to-day basis with this? Let's see, you are knowing the vehicle or thing that you're in to navigate or find weaknesses in it, or you are doing a talent which is kind of dumb and garbage, which you should house rule out of existence. That's the early on stuff. And then you're I guess you could fix your ship. You do a leadership check to rally the troops once every 24 hours so they have an easier time with discipline checks. Fire control is neat. That'd be nice to have. Is it worth waiting to the very end of a tree? I think even as a supplemental tree for astrogation, the Fringer might be better. The Fringer is at least decent at that. Plus they have pilot right next door. Or part of it. You're a ship captain who kind of knows a wide variety of roles on the ship. Like you're a restaurant manager who's worked busboy, and also you've waited tables, and the greeter, and so you kind of know a little bit of everything. But you're that, but with spaceships, and so that would kind of fit the character, I guess. I feel like Driver might do a better job of that, and is more interesting and more consistently useful. But I don't know, maybe it really fits your character. I don't think this would be interesting to play overall. Maybe as a techie help your spaceship kind of supplement. I like that one with known schematic really early on, helping with repairs. For certain people it might be a decent supplement, but it's really hard to imagine someone wanting to play this unless it just happens to really fit their character and they don't have access to Driver, or it's a combination of things that don't really fit their character as much. Or the leader, there's a supplement, universal supplement from Dawn of Rebellion, Spaceship Captain. I don't remember what I said about that tree. I don't remember anything about it. It's probably better than this, and probably more what you want than this, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe if one of these columns sound like a decent supplement to one of your characters. Let's say you are going to play a Commodore knowledge. Those are the two big things. You have two talents, although one of them is garbage unless you house rule it. Two big talents which are based off of your knowledge check, and they're not the easiest checks in the world, so having a 4 intellect is good. And of course that will help you with the fixing the spaceship stuff and the astrogation stuff, so a strong intellect is a natural fit. Mon Calamari was probably... Admiral Akbar was the template for this, right? And they have a strong intellect and good knowledge, right? Because the fish got... The fish people got good schools. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right. That might actually help you to be a Mon Cal in this, and Admiral Akbar is the template for Commodore type character, you'd imagine. Not that I ever saw him, like, fix a thing or do anything but just tell other people what to do, which you don't have enough of this as far as I'm concerned. I think he definitely did the fire control action at one point. Anyway, it's not the point. Building it, intellect, then whatever you want. Probably agility, because... shooting things is good in Star Wars. It'll help you shooting on the ship with your gunnery checks if you ever end up doing that, which unfortunately we do not get as a career skill, but, you know, it'll help you with that. And also just day-to-day on-the-ground grunt work of shooting people. It won't be a horrible time to have a strong agility, at least a 3, maybe even a 4, and probably a 4 intellect. It's not going to be a terrible tree, but there are definitely more interesting ones. I mean... how many are there? Several dozen? Yeah, it's fine, I guess. The other ones are definitely better. Hey, you! Shirt! Buy it.